Hello and welcome to the next webinar in the series here on the Societies of Photographers. Today's webinar is a home versus commercial studio, which is right for you, with Emma Walker, which is proudly supported by Sony and London Camera Exchange. Emma is a newborn and family photographer based in Lincolnshire in a commercial studio. And during this webinar, she will guide you through her transition from shooting in a home studio to moving into a commercial studio, and the impact and opportunities that the global pandemic has had on her business. So a massive welcome to Emma. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you on the webinar today. Can you hear us?
Colin.
Good. You can hear us. And thank you very much, Mark, for joining us as well.
Sorry, just glitched a bit.
Well, hopefully that will sort itself out in the next couple of minutes. Mark, again, thank you, Colin, very much for supporting us. It's great to have Sony's support for these webinars. We know we've done some fantastic webinars in the past, and it's great to be back on with another series. I know there's so many people talking about, home studio cabins or, high street studios and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a really interesting webinar today to get your perspective on it, Emma, and how it's transformed your business. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. If you're joining the stream, do say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. It's fantastic to see where everyone's tuning in from. And also, if you do have any questions for Emma, then please do let us know. I will try and ask them as we go along through the webinar. And if not, we'll do a bit of a Q&A at the end. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great webinar. And we've seen the quick run through before, and it's going to be really interesting. So get your notepads ready, get ready to take lots of notes. It's going to be really, really good. So with that, are you happy to pull up the presentation, Mark?
Yep, let's go for it.
Amazing. So we've got that now live on the screen. So Emma, we're going to bow out of the presentation for now. The webinar will be in the background. But again, if you've got any Q&A, then please do let us know. But again, from us, Emma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for asking me. Right, hello. So thanks for logging in and coming to join me today. I just basically wanted to run through my personal experience of working from home in a home studio, and then my transition to moving to my first commercial space, and sort of the trials and tribulations along the way. So a little bit about myself. I've been a professional photographer for 4.5 years now. I started off taking thousands of photos of my kids, basically, and whilst out of work, having my family and trying to find my feet back in the world of work, realised one day, you're taking quite a lot of photographs here. Maybe there's something in this. So that's where my journey began. I am a newborn and family photographer. It's just my comfortable place. I think it fits the time of life that I'm in at the moment, focusing on families, and I'm a member of SWPP, relatively new to it, but wow, we've been in lockdown. We've been feeling quite isolated, not having the usual shows to go to. It's been great feeling like I'm part of a community again with like-minded people, and so can't thank them enough for giving me a bit of escapism. So next slide, please, Mark. So today we're going to go through we've just been through my journey into professional photography. I'm going to talk about my camera kit, show you a few examples of my work. I don't want to bombard you with it too much, but I'd like to talk about a couple of the more popular poses that I get asked for, and talk a little bit about my camera settings and how the images were created. Then we're going to move on to how to design your perfect studio space. We'll talk about how to design a home studio, and I've actually worked in sort of two different kinds of home studio. First one being within the spare room of my house, and the second one was a garage conversion. And then we'll move on to talking about my first commercial space. We'll touch on key equipment, which you'd need for each type of space, although to be fair, a lot of it crosses over. We're going to go through COVID-19 safety equipment. It's obviously huge at the moment when we're looking to reopen again. There's certain things that are definitely that we have to have in place. There's other things that are beneficial to have in place. Then we're going to talk about the global pandemic and how that's impacted my business as a family photographer, and then also, on a positive note, look towards opportunities for the future. Next slide, please, Mark. So starting off, done a bit of an introduction so you know about me. My 5-year plan basically was, I've got 4 children. I didn't want to be cast off into the world of unknown when the last one went to school. So 4.5 years ago now, I sort of started off with trying to become a professional photographer, and moving towards when the last one goes to school, that I'd be hitting the ground running with a viable business in place. That is pretty much gone as I've wanted it to, albeit the pandemic has strangely accelerated that plan somewhat. I didn't expect to take on a commercial space until my last child was at school, but as we're going to touch on later on, there's been certain opportunities that have arisen from the lockdowns. So next part is laying the right foundation. So before we look at building a studio or where our studio space is going to be, we need to think, is this right for us? What type of photography do I want to go into? Are you even going to enjoy it? You're all right investing thousands of pounds into a beautiful studio space, doing a few shoots and thinking, it's maybe not for me, or maybe this genre of photography is not for me. So laying the foundations would be go on training courses. There's so many people in this industry that have been around, for like a decade or more, top of the game, who you can go and do training days with, relatively inexpensive as well, and just make sure that your path, your journey is going in the right direction with the right type of photography. I assume that I'd want to do a bit of everything. I'd want to do newborns, families, cake smashers, events, but you can't necessarily do all of those things. It's nice to sort of fine tune and do what you love as well. So I mean, I've got to there's so many people I need to thank for being a major part of my journey into photography. A main one being Gary Hill and his lighting courses. I mean, that's where I met Mark at Sony at one of Gary's training days. I've got several other photography friends that are all friendships forged from going there. But yeah, thank you basically, Gary, for helping me get a clearer path as to what I wanted to do. And you've got people like Natasha Ince, if you're interested in maternity photography, must train with her. Maggie Robinson for family studio photography, and of course IPS, she is our IPS queen. And Nina Mace for outdoor photography. So just a few people there who've been really important in my journey, and who I would recommend looking into, booking on and doing some training with once we're out of lockdown, just so you can really figure out, is this the type I want to do before we start looking at building our own studio. So next slide, please, Mark. So camera kit. First up, I know that we're doing this in conjunction with Sony today, but they've had no impact into why I chose Sony, and my kit. It's all purchased myself. I made the decision to use Sony when I had a number of other well-known brands accessible to me at the time. Next slide, please, Mark. So this beautiful little camera is where I started off, the Sony Alpha 6000. I remember standing in, I think it was in PC World or Currys at the time, with a sea of DSLR cameras in front of me. And I'm not going to lie, I went in with relatively little knowledge about cameras, just knowing that I needed something more than the little sort of holiday snapshot cameras that I'd been using up to that point. And I fully expected to go away with a Canon. It's what everybody seemed to have. And then this little thing was sort of sat there winking at me from the shelf. It didn't look like anything else that was around me. It was white to start with, so it was quite nice looking. And when I sort of picked it up, it was light. I know everyone raves about Sony because the lightweight, and it was packed full of wonderful things that it could do. One of my favourite aspects of this camera was the tilting screen, so that, you know, if you're trying to get your whole family in, or you just want more of the scene, it tilts out, so you can really see so much more. It's fantastic. And next slide, please, Mark. So I shot with the A6000 for excuse me for the first 2 years of my journey. That included going to training days, and then it also was when I started off having paid clients. I got to the point where I felt like I needed to upgrade my camera system when things really started taking off, and I started getting a consistent, regular client base, and they were then wanting wall art, and I just needed something a little bit more from my camera. So that's when I upgraded to the Sony AR7 Mark III. This was, well, 2 years ago now, 18 months, 2 years ago, that must have been. Fantastic camera. Again, can't praise it enough. The eye autofocus on it is incredible. It just takes all the stress away of trying to get the focus exactly where you want it to be. And the animal eye autofocus, again, brilliant, same reasons. But when I'm doing family photography, I find that dogs are obviously another family member, and I really do try and integrate them into all of my sessions, newborn, city sessions, family ones, and so having that facility on there is invaluable. The customizable menu buttons on it, there's so much to think about when you're in the middle of a shoot, dealing with your client, making sure your set's working for you, the lighting's right. I wanted a camera that was going to almost think for me in a way, have everything at the fingertips. I don't want to be going through millions of different menus and flapping about what I'm trying to find and missing the shots that I needed. So the customizable buttons for me are wonderful. You can have it just literally at the touch of a button. You can go through, you can sort your white balance out, you can switch between the eye autofocus and the animal eye autofocus. It's a brilliant function. Touch screen, so like if I'm wanting to really make sure it gets a particular point more in focus, just tap it straight on there and then get shooting. This also has the tilt screen like the A6000 did. So now with the type of work I do, if I'm photographing a newborn from above, for example, you can't always get right over that baby to get the angle that you need. But with this, you can hold your camera, hold your camera straight out over the baby, obviously with your safety strap around your neck still, and tilt the screen and get right over and get that shot that you need easily. So next slide, please, Mark. This is just a little bit, a few examples of the work that I've created with my Sony gear. So I'll be quiet for a minute and let you sort of learn a little bit more about the type of pictures I take. Hello, got you back there. So, Mark, I can't quite see the slides on my screen. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So this, just going to talk a little bit about a few of the images and what the camera settings were for them. This is my most popular requested pose from my newborn families. People want the faces of their little ones together on one picture, and this is a wonderful way of doing it. This was not my idea for this pose. It was Emma Jane. I went on a training day with her, and she's just absolutely fantastic at finding new and imaginative ways of posing siblings together, and this was one of her poses, which I now use in every single session. So this was probably one of the only times that I had the older sibling actually hold the baby while the baby was in situ. So first off, you get the little one asleep, and then what the baby's on there is they're on a beanbag with fabric backdrop over it. Then there's a gap between the beanbag and the backdrop. There's a backdrop stand with a second same fabric, and the sibling basically slots in between. So she'd come forward, held her brother, looked at me, smiled. She was just an absolute dream to capture. This was shot on my 50mm 1.4. I adore that lens. Like, I would shoot every single session just with that lens. If I could only have one, that would be the one that I'd get for my type of photography. Settings for in the studio for me tend to stay the same. So my shutter speed's 1/100, ISO 100, and then it gives me a really I feel consistent sort of look to my images. I get enough sharpness with these settings, and then just to show you this, it doesn't always go that well. If we could have next slide, please, Mark. So bear with me a second. There we go. So this one. This sibling did not want to join in, bless him. It was an absolute joy to be around, such a little character. Mum and Dad, just wanted this one shot, as they always do, but that tends to be the shot that can be so hard to get. So I just wanted to show you another way of doing it. The image at the bottom isn't the actual final image. You can see there's still some touching up needed to be done with the harsher line where the dark grey meets the lighter grey. But I lost some of my files at some point last year, so this is the best version I could get in time. But if you look along the top, it shows the little baby and the sibling together. The only thing that I used from that first image was the older sibling's shirt area. Then the next image, Mum had gone to feed the baby at this point, so I just wanted that perfect smile from the sibling, which we got on image 2. Then the next image along, we've got the baby asleep. So sibling had gone off to get crisps or chocolate or some kind of reward for his big smile he'd done. And then we were able to pose the newborn just how I needed him to be. And then the last shot is that one's just showing how I then start to edit them both together. And it results in that final image. So next slide, please, Mark. This one, this basically shows that you can create your own composites in the studio. If you've done newborn photography before, you're probably aware that there's lots of digital backdrops that you can buy. So you basically get the bed, the bowl, the scenery, whatever's going on, and you'll be left with a space in the middle to add baby into. So for this one, it's my backdrop wraps and little bed that's in there. But for me, that bed wasn't just quite big enough for how I wanted to pose her. And she was quite a big baby. So imagine baby's not on that scene. I photographed from above with my AR7 with the tilt screen, so I could get right over the top of it, photographed the scene that I wanted to add baby into. Then away from this set, baby was wrapped up, she was asleep, and she was placed onto a cream loose wool all around her. That's so that you can replicate the shadows when you come to join those two images together. So she was photographed on a cream fluff, and then in editing brought in, and some of that cream fluff was erased in order to blend her onto the bed set. Again, you can see that my shutter speed and ISO have stayed the same as the last shot. Composites are such a good way of adding variety to your gallery. If you just got one shot when the baby's asleep, it might be the only time that the baby's asleep during the session. If you have cream fluff and you get baby asleep as she is there, you can see she's, you know, straight from above, straight down, like a little bug wrapped up there. You've got that image. You can then place that onto a number of sets that you can create after the family's gone home. So really strongly advise thinking about including digitals into your gallery. It helps pad that gallery out, and parents love the extra detail. It's also good because you're not having to worry about safe posing so much. I mean, you would be very cautious about putting a newborn on a raised platform like that is, or, you know, most of the time you would have an assistant anyway to help you. You'd always have the parent, if you didn't have an assistant, very close, even with the hands within that picture, ready to grab baby should they move. But if you've got the little one and they're just on a cream fluff, on virtually flat on the floor on a cushion, whatever, you don't have that to worry about. It can really help the session flow. So next slide, please, Mark. This one, I do offer maternity sessions as well. I find them a bit harder. I'm not going to lie. You're photographing a lady when she's probably bigger than she's ever been. Skin's changing, all sorts of matters changing, her hair, you know, so much going on, and you're trying to make this lady feel like the best that she's going to feel while celebrating her bump, her changing body, and the journey that she's going through. But this is one of my favourite images, especially as it includes the dogs, you know, the family's first children, as it were. So we took this image, similar kind of settings for that as well, ISO just a little bit higher. We went through the full maternity session, various poses, without the dogs, with the partner, without the partner, and also whilst the dogs were there, because they were very well behaved, but there were, you know, there's 3 dogs. There's a lot going on in the studio that day. So whilst they were there, we also shot for the newborn session, which I knew that they were going to be coming back for. If you move to the next slide for me there, Mark. So this is the resulting image once baby had arrived. So when the dogs were at the studio on the same day as the maternity session, I got the bucket, the wrap, and got it all set up. And the doggie's dad stood above and just dropped treats into the bucket. And eventually we managed to get the dogs all looking down. That was always with the plan to then digitally add baby in once they'd arrived. I would never include dogs and newborns in one image. I'd always do it as a composite. It's just not worth the risk. People can think, you know, oh, my dog won't hurt my baby. They'd never do that. But that dog's not in its normal environment. It's relatively new to having a baby. You know, it's brand new to having a baby in its environment, taking attention from its human mummy and daddy. And they're in a totally new setting in your studio, in my studio. You just don't know what's going to be going through that dog's mind. So I personally don't like to take the risk and always shoot to include dogs and children with composites. This image particularly plays on my heartstrings because since we took the maternity image that had all 3 dogs in, one of the Labradors passed away before baby was born, which is pretty heartbreaking, to be honest. But it just made this image mean so much more to my clients as they had all of their babies, as it were, in one shot. So just gives you the power of photography, isn't it, really? Next slide, please, Mark. I just wanted to include these just to show, you know, not just studio-based stuff. These are my children. These are not clients' children, but I'm just trying to move into more of a relaxed style, less posed. and golden hour. I absolutely love. It's quite an American way of shooting. If you follow any of the American photographers, Jessie Salter being one of them, she just captures such organic, candid moments, and that's what I'm trying to build on as my goal for this summer, hopefully, when we're allowed out and about. But this again was shot on my Sony Prime lens, 50mm. Again, love that lens. And I was just really pleased with the creaminess of the background, the colours, and how sharp. I was shocked how sharp the images were in natural light, because that's like alien to me. You know, I'm in there relying on my light all of the time. So to get outside and see eyelash by eyelash just how amazing quality that kit is, it's given me a real project for the future to try and build on with my clients. Next slide, please, Mark. So let's move on to home studio. Now, I haven't included any pictures of my very first home studio because I don't have any. As I said earlier, I lost some data last year, and unfortunately those images were on there. But when I first set up, it was the spare room of my old house. It was about 15 feet by 15 feet, thereabouts. It had a large window on one wall. Obviously, I had a door on the other wall, and there was actually a door on the other wall, thinking about it. So it left very, very little free wall space to work from, but I did have one wall at the end to hang my paper backdrops from. And, you know, you find a way. It doesn't matter if you've not got the biggest space, the biggest studio. If you've got a space and you know what you want to try and capture, you make it work. You know, you don't put obstacles in your way, do you? You make a space work for you. And that did for a number of years. We moved house then, and at that house I earmarked the detached garage. My poor husband, bless him, always wanted a garage, still hasn't got one. Oops. But this it was crying out to be a studio. So that is what it ended up looking like. If we go on to the next slide, Mark. And you can see the image on the left is where we started. It was just a garage. Where I'm stood taking the photo were the open garage doors. So we ended up closing those, sealing them up, boarding them, insulating them. And then as you look at the second image of after, where the props are on that back wall, is where the garage door was. So when it comes to designing your space, you need to think, what areas do I need to fit into that space? What's important? So obviously you need a shooting zone. You need client seating area. You're going to need prop storage of one. I mean, I'm a prop addict, so I needed quite a bit of space for my prop storage. You don't need that many props. You could have, and again, I'm talking specifically about newborn and family. But if you need a beanbag, which you can see at the back of that image. I love the original photo blocks mother bean. It's like a velour fabric, so when you're using your posing aids underneath it to pose your newborns and do all that business with, it doesn't slip. It's just incredible. Buy right the first time if you going into newborn photography. Don't get the slippy faux leather ones. They're an absolute nightmare. You'll end up thinking that you're doing something wrong, or that it's just impossible to pose them, when it's not. It's just everything sliding around underneath. Get the velour mother bean. So back onto designing. So you've got your prop area, your client seating, you've got your shooting area. So then you can, with whatever space you're earmarking, whether you're building it or whether you've already got it, you can walk that space and sort of imagine what it'd be like to be in there. How far away from your shooting space? What distance do you need available for you to stand in to get your shots? Where's your client seating going to go? How big is it? Is it a couple of single chairs? Is it a settee like I've got? I think settees tend to be better because, you know, especially if people are breastfeeding, they might have the husband helping pass, like, you know, to give them privacy whilst they're feeding and things. They don't want to be on a chair the opposite side of the room. They want to be near each other. If they've got siblings, younger children, they want to snuggle up and have an iPad next to mummy and daddy, not somewhere else. So maybe a settee is quite a good investment to have in there. So you've got your seating area. Prop area. When I designed this studio, I wanted to show my clients what props I had. It was a good marketing tool at the time. I wanted them to see that if they came to me, they could have a choice of all this stuff for me to take pictures of with them. And it made for a pretty picture, you know, for my website and that. The reality when it came to actually shooting my clients, it sounds awful, doesn't it? When I was taking pictures of my clients, I'd be there. Backtrack from that a minute. If you look at the picture of the after, above the prop storage where there's that flat wall, that's where I after this picture, mounted my paper backdrop, wall-mounted paper backdrop system. So if I was shooting families, it would pull down from there, covering the props, and I'd shoot onto that. If that was up, you'd see the props, and then to the right of the image at the back, you can just about make out I had 2 5-foot by 5-foot sections of fake wood floor mats, they're called, from Baby Dream backdrops in America. They're soft, a bit like carpet, quite heavy, but they were in situ back there. So if I was photographing the baby within a prop at that portion of my studio, it left a nice walkway from client seating right to the back of where my props are, which ended up, honestly, it became a bit of a problem. They'd seen what they could have in my marketing. They could have seen the props, they've seen the images produced with it, and then when they were there in person, it became like a shop environment almost. So whilst I'm busy posing and taking photographs of their little one on the floor at that end, there's so many times I'd turn around and there was like 8 different props had been laid out, and they're like, oh, if you just get a chance to take a picture in this and just a picture in that. There's just not enough time to fit that into your newborn in particular workflow. So it kind of became a hindrance. So I would say to you, if you're going to have props on show, maybe limit it a little bit. Have a couple of key pieces that work with the design of your area that they can see, maybe not necessarily pick up and access as easily as I did it. Because you don't want to get into a situation where it goes from being a positive of look what you could have to no, you can't have that, and then it puts a little bit of a downer on the session, because they're with you at this point. As far as they're concerned, they've paid and they want these things, and I understand that, but it's not going to help you if you're trying to keep your session time to, say 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, depending on which package they've picked. If you're then trying to take this baby that you've got asleep for these particular poses, and now you're in and out of 8 different props. So I would strongly consider what you present and what's accessible for your clients. So that's prop storage. We've done seating area. I've got, it's a light grey settee. I never had any problems with stains. People were really respectful when it came to eating. So you don't necessarily need something dark or wipeable. Additionally to the prop storage, I also needed the cupboard that's right next to the table to hide all my stuff in that I didn't want out, like sample products, spare bulbs, that sort of stuff, cleaning products. So maybe have somewhere in your studio that's private that you can store things in. I don't think I added a picture of it on here, but the wall that you can't see on that picture had a television on for doing IPS, so that was right next to the seating area. Maggie will kill me, to be honest, but I haven't fully rolled out IPS yet and didn't then. So and that's nothing to do with Maggie's training. She's amazing. I'm just such a chicken when it comes to in-person selling. But what I used the telly for was my own marketing material. So I'd kind of have a nice slideshow, plinky plonking away to some nice motive music in the background. I didn't use it as a telly. I didn't want them to zone out. I did want them to still be watching the children and be mindful of what was happening in the studio. But yeah, bit of marketing, bit of wall art on there. It kind of put it in their head. And then let's see, one moment. So yeah, next slide, please, Mark. This is just basic floor plan of what's included in that space. Really important that you design your space. Do yourself a floor plan. figure out which settee you're going to have, get the dimensions for your newborn beanbag, dimensions for your sideboard, and like, even if your space isn't built yet, mark it out on your lawn, get some ribbon or something and physically measure the space out, measure the size of your furniture, and then walk that space to make sure that it's going to fit. Because if you're spending all this money on having somewhere built or converting somewhere, it needs to work for you. You don't want to come to the exciting point of putting the furniture in and think, oh God, I wish I'd got a settee that was like 15 centimeters smaller or something, because it doesn't quite fit in there. It's quite important if you want to get it to look lovely. You've got to plan it pretty well. So that's that on there. Next slide, please, Mark. There's legal requirements to consider whether you're building your own space or if you are working from somewhere within your own home. So notify your local council of your intention to run your business from home. Seek any necessary planning permissions, conform to and have building regulations signed off. They're not working against you, they're trying to work with you to make sure that your space meets all legal requirements. And the guy that came out a few times to my garage conversion was lovely, and he'd sort of say, oh, you need to do this, particularly with like depth of beams and things and insulation. He'd say, this is what you need to do, but if you wanted to go an extra degree, you're going to have this benefit or that benefit. So he was just nice to have, to throw ideas off and get advice from. Check with your mortgage provider or landlord if you're renting, if you're even allowed to run your business from home. Check the deeds of your home. Sometimes, and forgive me, I don't know the correct terminology for it, but there can be some things within your mortgage that prohibit you from even having a business from home. And then I guess there's going to be insurance implications and all, a world of hell if you don't get it right. So cover everything and make sure that you're satisfied that you're legally able to go forward working from home and with your intended designs. And obviously purchase adequate insurance for your buildings, contents and public liability. Next slide, please, Mark. I just wanted to give you a little behind the scenes of within my converted garage studio space to see how the dimensions worked for me. I mean, it was tight. It was width-wise, it was about 14 feet wide, that garage, which is probably the least it could be to attempt to make it work. I struggled sometimes to get my lighting in the position that I wanted to have it in. Maybe there's different solutions, but I love Elinchrom, D-Light 1. It's quite a sizable piece to try and fit in when you're already limited on the width of your studio space. So, I wouldn't go less than 14 feet in width of your space. Another 2 feet even on that would have made a world of difference. You see, I would take the picture, and for the lady that stood up in the dark, I've got in my pre-edited image, I had all that background to deal with, which adds on to the time of finishing your gallery. So I was having to remove the lights, remove the chairs, replace them, and then start editing the picture as I wanted to. And at the time when you're trying to make that space work for you and be in business rather than not be in business, that was fine. But then as time goes on and you get more and more clients and you get busier and busier, you really need to keep that session time to a minimum. Go in, capture what you need, get out, get it edited and get it back to the client and move on to your next customer. So you always manage to find a way. But if we're looking at designing spaces that are going to make your life a little bit easier from the outset, go wider than 14 feet if you're trying to create similar sort of set to what I did there. So next slide, please, Mark. Pros and cons of a home studio. So first off, positives to having a home studio. It's super convenient, especially if you're juggling, maybe you've got another job, maybe you've got more family commitments, maybe you're caring for another family member, maybe that, old or young, maybe you're still growing your family whilst trying to start up your business like I was. It's convenient having it just at your fingertips. So even when the client's not in, you can nip out with your children, you can set it up, you can get it clean. It was nice having it just there. Another positive, flexible working hours. You're as busy or as not as you need to be. No travel time and no travel expenses. And probably the biggest benefit of working from home, very limited overheads, which is important. I think when you're first starting up, stuff's expensive, over and above your camera equipment, which you're obviously going to need to get anyway and get it right first time with the right gear. You need to invest in props. There's sort of a basic kit to get you started off, but it won't be long before you start getting drawn into all these other wonderful things that people are constantly making. So the limited overheads means that you can really build your collection, keep taking training. You don't just take one training course. Every year you want to be looking at booking with the next person who inspires you, who you can draw valuable experience from. So yeah, limited overheads helps you to keep investing in your business in those early days. Another positive to working from home or owning your space is free reign to alter the space. You don't need to ask anybody other than any legal requirements that's necessary. If you want to go out and paint it a colour, you go paint it a colour. If you want to add another wall, move a wall, you go and do it. There's a lot to be said for that, to feel like you're in control of your space. Another benefit, it's safe, it's secure, you can see it, it's right next to you. You don't have to worry so much about theft or buildings damage. Cons to having a home studio. Now, again, this is just from my personal perspective and the family situation that I was in at the time. I used to suffer so bad with anxiety about maintaining the studio. Not cleanliness in general, because obviously you need to have a clean and well-presented studio space. It was more the access to it. So think about your client's journey. They're not just going to magically appear in your studio. They've got to park on your drive. They've got to walk past your house. Maybe they've got to walk through your house to get to a studio that's inside, or they've got to walk through your garden to get to the studio. It's human nature. You take everything in. If they park on your drive and your cat or your neighbour's dog or someone's left you a little present somewhere in your gravel, that's not going to look that great, is it? So that's an extra job that you've got to do. Walking, with me, I've got 4 kids, they're not quiet. So when it came to, if it was a weekend, when my clients were arriving, if all hell was breaking loose, because God forbid somebody had to have their hair washed, you don't want your clients hearing that, outside, as much as they're understanding that you've got a family and it's family life. Quite a lot of people, it's their first child. Their little baby's not making a peep yet, they don't know what they're letting themselves in for. So yeah, personally, it used to really stress me out before a session to think, how is everything presented exactly as I need it to be presented? Infringement on personal space and family life and over familiarity. You're bringing people to your home. I've had situations before when I was in my garage conversion, which is detached from the house, with the clients, but I didn't have toilet facilities in that garage. They were in an extension right on the side of our house, and they were both the family toilet and a client's toilet. So I would have to, I'd be involved in posing the baby mid-shoot, and then I'd always welcome them to come and go as they please to use the toilet. But always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, where are they? What are they seeing along the way? And sometimes people would, they'd be a long time, and then maybe I'd done what I needed to with baby, mum was now feeding again, and I'd sort of nip in to get her a drink, and you'd discover the other half of your client's family, and they were sort of lingering. Maybe they'd found toys in the garden of my children, maybe they'd found my children and they were now playing in the garden with my children. There's no problem with that as such, but you're trying to get through your session and your family is trying to get on with their lives. It can be quite hard to keep that separation when you're at home, especially in the summer months when your kids are off, and you don't want them trapped inside or not daring to go out. Just think about how your space is going to work well around family life and around your business. Another negative for me was no separation from family. Whilst initially it was nice to finish a session and the kids be there, my kids be there straight away, you never felt like you could just focus, or I never felt like I could just focus on my business and then come home to my family. So that was something that I think I needed for my next step, wherever I was going to end up being. There's a small risk to your personal belongings, which I've just touched on, and that's, I'm not necessarily saying that's theft, but it could, accidental damage. You've got to make sure your correct home insurance is in place. And then there's also neighbour conflicts. We spoke to our neighbours before I started working from home, and they knew what was going to happen. They knew the increase in traffic, which I had one client a day. It's not like there was tons of traffic, but you've got to manage where those clients park. As much as you can send the information out before a session and say, park on the drive, we've left a space for you, we're all ready. They'll park down the street. They'll hang over the edge of your neighbour's driveway. It's just they're there to get to you on time, and sometimes not always considerate about how they're getting to you. So just something else to consider. Right, next slide, please, Mark. So I'd got to the point when my space had those sort of things going on that we just talked about with the cons, and it just wasn't big enough. I was finding that I was having to move so much equipment and props out of the studio before my session had even started, and it was filling the house. It was a nightmare when it was bad weather because everything was getting wet as I was bringing it in and out. And also, like mid-session, I'd have everything set up for my newborn, and stuff ends up everywhere, outfits end up everywhere. Before we then moved on to the next section, maybe the family section, you're having to like move everything again, bring more stuff back into the house. It was just adding on and adding on. And I was having like 6-hour sessions. It's too long. So this all happened and sort of came to a head around May time last year. So we were in the first lockdown, and I was starting to think, what we're going to do going forward. I started looking at various commercial spaces in our local area because I didn't want to have much travel time. And this place popped up. So this is part of the Marshall's Yard shopping complex. It's a big complex for loads of different shops and restaurants, like 35 different shops, Italian restaurants, that sort of stuff. And it's like 3 minutes drive down the road. Next slide, please, Mark. So this just gives you an idea, location, location, location. You can see my doorway pointed to the arrows where I'm situated. And within what looks like sort of a courtyard of shops there, it's like 2-minute walk for clients to nip around the corner. Another thing that I didn't add onto the list of my home studio, people were very much trapped. Once the clients were in the studio, in that quite small, tight space, if you've got a couple of different family members in there, previously when we were allowed to have lots of people in the studio, there'd be a couple of family members, maybe grandma, granddad. It was such a tight space with limited things to do in the length of time of a session. So another thing I was looking for were additional perks for my clients when visiting me, and this covered it. Dads, bless them, as much as they're there, 9 times out of 10 the dads financed the session that the families come into. And they're there with all these pretty things around and props and all that. And maybe they've still got business they need to do because they've had to have a day off to bring the new mum to the session or as well. They've got things they need to do as much as they want to be there, involved and present in the pictures. 4 hours is a long time to be there. So where I'm situated, they can nip to the shops, they can nip, get a coffee, do a bit of business, and then come and go as they please. So the location works well for me of the new place. Next slide, please, Mark. This is a before. It was a beauty salon. I went in, it seemed so dark and dingy, with lots of work to do. Walls needed to come out. Next slide, please, Mark. This is when the walls were removed. So when you've decided on a space and you're dealing with your landlord, make sure that it's set in stone to start with who's responsible for doing this work. In my case, I can't speak for everybody else, but in my case, they wanted to let that space, and they understood that the usage previously as a beauty salon with lots of different treatment rooms was not suitable for what I was going to need it for, and probably what most people were going to be looking to take it on for. So they were very good, and at their cost they removed all of the walls and basically made it good, made it a nice big white box for me. They did all the painting. Next slide please, Mark. And this is part of the room that I ended up with afterwards. So nice open space. Crucial, let me just see on here, crucial areas that I needed in here, like we talked about designing the space. I wanted to have a permanent set where I could take newborn pictures, sitter pictures, family pictures, and for me that was this like boho bed area. It's the formal poses where they sort of stand with the paper backdrop and they do all that are lovely. They're an art form in themselves. But I was finding that when I had sort of clients that were a little bit more shy, or maybe they just felt that those highly posed images were not their style, they wanted something where they weren't necessarily looking at the camera, where it was more of an emotional attachment to their little ones. And the bed set, which was heavily inspired by, again, some of the more candid American photographers, was the solution for me. So where the backdrop holders are, that's like a multifunctioning space. You've got the wall mounted backdrop system, and I would always say go for a light, a mid and a dark colour. Underneath that backdrop system, which is lovely because it tucks out the way, I then have a freestanding backdrop stand, and I can clip all of my themed cake smash sets to those. Props for Togs are my go-to backdrop provider for cake smashers. They're just exceptional, perfect sizes and really wearable. To the right of that section there was a sort of quite an awkward little nook really, which I've used to hang my couture dresses on. I want them to be able to see them. I wanted my clients to get excited about the next session they could possibly have, so they're on show enough without being fully accessible for them to go and start taking them off. Little bit of product placement on my windows. Again, you want to present things that you want them to buy. If they can see it, they tend to buy it. Next slide, please, Mark. This is the other side of the room. So this is my client seating area, again with the display table, so they can see the products and watch what's going on. I wanted them close enough to see what was happening with their children, with the newborn, whilst also being far enough away to just leave me to it and get on with it. Because as much as they try and help, and they'll come in, and if baby's unsettled, if a mum, especially a breastfeeding mum, starts touching the baby or God forbid talking to them, sort of going up and like, oh, it's okay, babies hear it. They've got these like super senses, and they know that's mum. They know mum's going to feed them, and you're doomed because that baby's awake wanting a feed. So get mum and dad, family, whatever, comfortable out the way so that you can get on with your soothing techniques and working through the session. Next slide, please, Mark. This is just again, so you've got an idea of what's included in that space. So important areas for me in the commercial space were obviously the front door and the situation of my studio. I love it's, although it's part of a shopping centre, it's kind of all stood on its own. It's not on a main route. You're not next to like, I don't know, Greg's or somewhere else, you know, that there's a high volume of traffic coming to, constant people wandering past. It's not like that. It's whilst it's a shop, it's also out the way. So my clients can just come and go. You don't get anybody popping in or stood looking through the window or wondering why you're not open if they can't access the door. So that's another thing. Think when you're looking at retail space, the positioning of it, what's around you. Is it more of a traditional retail shop position where you're going to get traffic all the time and people need looking through the windows, or is it more of like an industrial space out the way that you can make work for you? I wanted a reception so that when my assistant works with me, she can welcome them in. We've got products stored behind there as well. Dressing room was important because in my home studio there just wasn't space for that. If my clients wanted to get changed, I left the room to give them some privacy, which isn't always ideal. You want to sort of be around the area. So the new space includes a dressing room. Prop storage, you might notice, is well out of the way. So there's not going to be any of that sort of prop shopping by my clients whilst we're mid-session. I only bring out into the room like say 3 big prop items that I'm going to use that session, and the rest of it's away, out of sight, out of mind. And then the rest of the room's just spread out with the permanent bed set, the wall of light, because that's not a real window. I'll move on and show you how we did that later. The multifunctioning backdrop space where the newborn beanbag also goes up to, dress storage area, and then the toilet. Having a toilet inside the studio is just a lifesaver. You know where your client is. The clients know where the younger children are. If they've nipped off, they can hear them. They're only just there. So that's a good feature. The square that I didn't label is baby change table. I could have put that in the toilet space because it's quite a large room, the toilet area. But sometimes clients want me to change the baby and I wouldn't want to take the baby out of sight. So I have it purposefully positioned close to the client seating area. So either they or I can use it and it's in full view. Little kitchen area. I don't encourage my clients to go in and use the kitchen. And since we've had the lockdowns and the new COVID policies that have been put into place, I'm not actually allowed to make clients food or drink while they're in the studio. So it doesn't really get used that much at the moment. But hopefully when things start to get lifted, there'll be a little coffee machine, a water machine, and they can get it as and when they want it from there. Next slide, please, Mark. So moving on to the wall of light. I wish I'd known about this when I had my garage studio, because I love that like natural, relaxed look that you get from looking like you're posing next to a window. You know, you can have no props and just white curtains, and there's like Susie Mitchell, those types of photographers create just stunning images that are really, really clean, all about the client, not lots of props at all. And I wanted to try and integrate something like that into what I was offering my clients. So bed set and the wall of light was the way forward. Next slide, please, Mark. So my husband and his work colleague made it for me. This just means that whatever space you're looking at, whether it's your old room in a house, whether it's a dark, long garage like I had before, you can make a fake window relatively inexpensively. These images hopefully give you a little idea how that was done. So they're just LED ceiling panels that had all been connected together. I wouldn't have a first clue how to do it, so luckily Paul, bless him, that works for my husband, he did. As you can see, they've all been attached to the back of a wooden frame that he made. They then clicked the panels together into the side that's going to be facing the studio, and that was all then attached securely onto the wall next to the bed. To diffuse the light a little, I just got the cheapest IKEA sheer curtains, lots of them, and put as many as I could onto the pole just to diffuse that light as much as I wanted it to. And then I finished it with 2 slightly thicker curtains that look like normal curtains really at each end. But this set is now my most requested area of the studio, and I just couldn't be without it. I've done it so that the bed can roll out of the way, so that then you can just photograph against the curtain. So it keeps it very very clean, very limited props. You can have a pregnant lady, lovely backlit pictures against the window, or little ones riding on sort of a little sweet white ride-on car or something in front of it. All work really nicely. And then I've got a Peacock Chair. If any of you have seen those, they're really popular at the moment. Great for indoor or outdoor photography. But that can get pushed up, and you can make that bed set look like a room or just a backlit window area. It's really versatile. Next slide, please, Mark. Just a few examples of some of the things that I've created on there up to now. It might not be everyone's taste, you know, and I'm still finding my feet, learning the different ways of using the light that I get from there. And I do sometimes also plug my Elincrom in and have it where it's pushed right up to my side of that fake window light, just to give me a bit more directional light rather than a harsh sort of split shadow which you can get from the window light. I bring my studio light in just to soften it, to feather that light a bit more across the face. Have it on a really low setting, otherwise it just absolutely blow them out. But yeah, just a little idea of how we've done newborn, family, and a sitter session with that set. Next slide, please, Mark. Now, key equipment. This goes across the board, whether you're shooting in a room, a garage, or a commercial space. Try to narrow it down. If you're just starting out, or if you've, like, say, been doing a different genre of photography, wedding events that, God, have been absolutely annihilated client-wise with these lockdowns and restrictions. Maybe you're looking to set up, another element of your business, and it being families and newborns. Trying to give you an idea of key things to get. Obviously, you need a camera with a trigger, and I can't hammer home enough about this 50 prime lens. It's just amazing, super versatile. If you're looking to get a new laptop, get one with loads of memory. Again, my apologies, I am rubbish at tech talk and all that kind of stuff. I know what I need and what it does, and that's who I am, really. I can't really over explain it, but get the one that's got the most amount of memory. You don't want to be having to mess about plugging in like extra memory and stuff. It's just something else to go wrong, which I found out unfortunately last year. So get the best memory that your budget can afford with your laptop. So next things, important things for your studio: wall mounted backdrop holder for your paper rolls. Get 3 paper backdrop rolls in a light, a mid, and a dark colour. If you want any information on where I get mine from, please just pop me a message. I can go through it with you after the webinar. You need your lighting system. I've just talked about the wall of light. For an idea, that roughly ended up for the light panels, it was about £600. For the curtains, it was minimal, probably £40 for the curtains and rails from IKEA. So that was, it's not too bad for the effect that you get. Your lighting system, I use Elincrom D-Light 1. You need your softbox, octabox, and the bulbs to go in it, and your stand. And your trigger, of course, as well. Then actual posing wise, I was talking earlier on about your newborn bean bag and your posing pillows. Again, I just go to Original Photo Blocks. There's others that make different versions, but Gabriella's velour one is just head and shoulders above the rest, in my opinion. It's fantastic. You need fabric backdrops. Again, if you think, keep it to a minimum amount, unless you want to go wild and just buy millions of props. Get a light, a white or a cream. It's really good. Get a mid colour, and then get a darker one. There's LSP Actions, which I use for all my newborn editing, also do a brilliant colour change action. So you don't have to have like 20 different coloured fabric backdrops. Have a light, which you wouldn't ever colour change. So you've got your cream or your white. You've got your mid and your dark actual fabric. These LSP Actions can colour change to anything. They're amazing. So if you're short on storage space, or budget's a little bit restrictive at the moment, just get the colour change action and a light, mid and dark, and you're away, creating a variety of different coloured poses for your newborns on the backdrops. Extra long wraps. I didn't know until relatively recently what the correct length wrap was for wrapping up your newborns in a nice, desirable way. Get extra long wraps. Red Owl Props is a great supplier of those. Baby J Knits. Look, Katie is just incredible at with her knitted wraps. They need to be extra long. You need all that space to wrap the baby and then finish it off with the nice little details at the end. And if you haven't got the length, there's no way you can replicate that image. And again, it knocks your confidence because you think, what am I doing wrong? Why doesn't mine look anything like that? I'm doing pretty much what they've said. It's just down to the length of your wrap. Also important, freestanding backdrop and stand with the clamps. That is just about £30 freestanding stand, and your clamps. You can attach your fabric backdrops. You know, if you're doing the sibling pose like I showed you earlier on, you'd attach your fabric to that and have it in between the beanbag and for your sibling to slot between. You'll also use it to put your cake smash backdrops on. Really versatile. The digitals I touched on with the image of the little baby in the bed. So in order to achieve that, you need to get a cream or a brown, cream and a brown flocati would be preferable. So then you can do dark digitals or you can do your lighter digitals. And Coochie Coo make the best fluffy woolly layers, so it's worth having a look on there. Then if you can only have like 3 props, I would say go for a wooden bowl, a bed, whether that's wooden or metal, and a bucket. You might not actually shoot a baby or pose a baby within those props. You might just use them to create your own digitals from. So pick something, if you're just going to pick one of each, pick something relatively neutral, like a lighter wood if you're on a lighter style of photography, or darker woods if you're darker. And then they're not gender specific. You'll be able to use them for all sessions. A 5 kilogram flat weight, have or some form of similar weight. If you are going to be posing the newborns in these props, put this weight in first in order to keep the baby safe, so that they're not going to be toppling over. You still need to have your assistant, or failing that, the parent on hand to keep baby safe. Baby shusher is a must. You can get white noise apps, but if someone rings you or your phone dies and it stops shushing right at a crucial point, you'll be spitting feathers. So invest in a little baby shusher. Amazon, about £30. And that's kind of it. If you have those things, you could shoot a family session, a sitter session, or a newborn session. You could just get on and get starting with that. Start honing your skills and your poses. And as your client base builds and you get more money in the bank, then you can start looking at gender specific props and things like that. You don't even have to have outfits for newborns from the get-go. You can just drape a wrap over them, one of the wraps you've already got to match your backdrops. And outfits, you don't have to have outfits for your clients yet. They can just guide them through what you want them to wear to fit your set. And that's it really. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of help with setting up. Next slide please, Mark. Just a quick behind the scenes setup to show you the mother bean with the layers of fabric. I use a couple of layers of fabric just to hide the posing beans that are under there. My little sib, my lockdown purchase, so I can still practice posing and wrapping babies. Obviously it's not a real baby, it doesn't cry, it's not being sick, it's not got gas, it's not upset, so it in no way replaces the need to train with and have real newborn babies, but it's good for you in a no pressure situation to learn your lighting and posing. That's a good investment. So the backdrop stand, as you can see, has got the fabric across the backdrop and then up over the stand. I've then got a little stand heater to keep the area around baby warm, not too hot, but nice and warm so they're comfortable. A little caddy that I keep my baby shusher, little teddies and my posing aids on. And then the lighting setup there is my Elincrom and my D-Light softbox. And that's that. So just a bit behind the scenes on how that equipment works. And next slide is just going to give you a couple more examples of my work. So I'll be quiet again for a bit. Thank you, Mark. So next, sanitization. This is obviously something. Cleanliness has always been super important within a studio, but with the pandemic, it's just gone crazy with different things that we need to have. Things like masks and antibacterial gel. I mean, I always use antibacterial gel anyway, but I did used to handle clients and newborns with no gloves. I can't imagine that. I honestly can't get my head around why I ever did, to be honest. Now that it's become a new, I hate that word, a new normal, you having to use all these things. But I use latex-free gloves and masks we have to have on. I just have the normal white and blue masks, nothing particularly fancy, just functional. An antibacterial gel I keep all around the studio, little pots that they can help themselves with. But to be honest, I'm going more towards the contactless one, so you can have it mounted on your wall and you've not got everyone touching it. It's just something else to clean, isn't it? But just the contact-free antibacterial gel, latex gloves. This is a beast of a machine that I came across, this Sterilo Uno air sanitizer. It's quite big. It's about, where are you on the screen? It's probably about that big, and it mounts onto your wall, and it's silent, but it takes all of the air from your space and filters it through this system with UV light. What's it called? Germicidal iridation, ultraviolet germicidal iridation, whatever that is. It goes through the UV light and it takes out the bacteria and it kills odors. So say you've got, I mean, client's going to be changing nappies within your studio space. It can stink for like a few minutes, and then before you know it, it's smellless, I think I want to say. It doesn't funnel out a fake smell or an odor. Or you got me again there. It takes out all of the odors from the air whilst also killing bacteria. So a number of things that I've invested in when it came to the first lockdown and the bounce back loans, I invested about £1,200 in these kinds of devices, in the air sanitizer, in the backdrop antibacterial gel dispensers, also any hand good. You don't want paper towels. Are we all right, Mark?
Yeah, we've got you back now. We've got you back now.
Are we on? Was it right? So yeah, so just invested some money in building clients. What's the word? Making their confidence, building clients' confidence in coming to me with all the worry of this pandemic, the germs, bringing their beautiful little everything in place that I physically can to try and Colin, all good? We're good.
It just broke up for a few seconds there, but we've got you back now.
Brill. Sorry, I think I got someone trying to ring me. It's gone now. So yeah, just trying to build the client's confidence that them coming to you is going to be safe and as sterile as possible. So we've got UV air sanitizer, gloves, face mask, antibacterial gel, the hand dryer. It's contactless again. Solution after because everything's encouraging them to wash their hands a million times and do all that. I chose to get a hand dryer. No mess. I don't have to handle any of their used towels or anything. It's just a filter to clean out every now and again. Then the towel warmer and UV sanitizer is for small props, things like tie backs and mini teddies. And to be fair, if some of the outfits that aren't soiled, they've not been dribbled or sicked on, and they've not sort of had a major poo explosion or something, just ones that have actually been worn by a baby, and if they're not going to get washed, then they get sprayed with a fabric sanitizer. And I also put them in the towel warmer, which is a UV sanitizer in itself. They're about £50, looks a bit like a microwave, and you lay your small props out in it and leave it in there, and it with it just gives it another level of sanitization. But my clients love it it's almost like, although it's a functioning thing, it's a bit of a show as well. Like you'll move from doing the beanbag poses before maybe you start family ones, and they're seeing you keeping these things clean, and it's things like that. I have a lot of nurses and teachers that come to me as clients, and it's been conversations we've had before that they've said, a part of why we chose you is because we appreciate these measures that you put in place. So that's been a positive for me from it. The aqua water spray, about £4 from John Lewis. I think I got mine from Amazon Do It as well. It's like it has nothing in it, no bad chemicals in it. It's got some form of acid that's like naturally produced by us anyway. But you can sterilize dummies and the child can use it straight away. You can sterilize the baby. You could use it, spray it onto a wipe and use that to clean baby if they've had a little accident. It's just great. It's so much easier than having to pop stuff in boiled water and wait an amount of time. And then the fabric spray, I use that for keep going over my settees and cushions, soft furnishings in between clients. And also for some of my big couture dresses that aren't going to get washed after every single use, and they don't get soiled because I don't use them outside. I steam them with a hand steamer, and then I finish it off with a layer of this fabric spray, so it's clean as far as I'm concerned. And next slide, please, Mark. Studio policies. I have a big sign printed in the studio. It's like AA3, whatever that size would be, and it's right near my entrance. I've got my hand sanitizer underneath it, so when my clients come into the studio and they're cleaning the hands, because I ask them to do it while they take the shoes off, they clean the hands, and whilst they're doing that, they're reading the studio policies, because it's all right, you can send 1,000 emails out to them, they're not going to necessarily read through all of it and maybe not retain the information through the excitement of coming for the session. So just having it there for them to see before you get started just gets those few things in place. Food is a big one for me because they're not meant to bring anything to the studio. It changes all the time, but it went through a time when they weren't allowed to eat in the studio. Then they were allowed to bring their own things in, and if they are bringing their own things in, I don't want them wandering around or giving the child anything and then walking across the sets, because it's just going to contaminate it and mess them up. And I've become really quite particular about it. If you've gone to all these extra methods to make sure your areas are clean, and then you're watching a Rice Krispie bun get just obliterated across your nicest furs and stuff, it's heartbreaking. So make sure they know if they're allowed to eat at that point, where it is. So I have them at the seating area, I give them a plate, and I make sure they know where to pop that plate when they've done. Might sound really, fussy, but it's just how I like to work, and ensuring everywhere's clean. So maybe come up with your own studio policies of key things that are important to you, that you want to make sure is in the forefront of your client's head before you get started. Next slide, please, Mark. Pros and cons of a commercial studio. So positives for me were work and family separation. I can be mum, my house can be the reality of what it is, which is upside down much of the time, and it's not going to affect my client's perception of me as a business owner or of my studio and the space they come into. Flexible working hours. Even though I've got a retail space, it's not on a strip of shops, so I can still have flexible working hours. I run my studio by appointment only, and it just works great for me. I'm not going to be there all the time. When my youngest child's at school in September, then maybe I would be there for walking potential clients sometimes, but I like to be able to shut the door and come and go as I please. The storefronts are positive in that I've got my advertisings out there. I've got my main logo above the door, and I have a board next to the door that just lists the type of sessions I do, my social media links, and my contact number. So it's good for advertising. Positives is that it's a larger studio space and it's got the self-contained toilet and kitchen. Marketing opportunities and collaborations with local businesses. That has been lovely for my mental health, forging friendships amongst the local community and with other businesses. And it's also been a big bonus for my business. We support each other, is it called cross-posting? So like I'll post about, we've just had all the Christmas minis, so I'd be posting about Christmas and make a comment about the local florist that's doing wreaths, and then she'd do the same with me. Just helping each other grow, like being supportive. Even other photographers, there's a couple of other photographers in our town, and yes, there's an element of competition, but also no, because we're targeting different types of clients, different session types, different budgets, doesn't mean that you can't still help each other out. So it's just been nice to feel part of something. Cons to having a commercial studio: travel time and cost. Well, I'm only 3 minutes up the road, but it's like if I'm wanting to go and set up, I can't just do it. But at the same time, at the end of a session, I always clean down and leave the studio set up, ready for the next session. So that's kind of just streamlined my processes, actually. Security, I'm fully alarmed. I've got cameras, a camera system in there, but it does play in your mind sometimes, especially with lockdown. I'm there much less than I ever would be. You just think, I hope it's safe. I hope no one's taken my precious things or damaged anything. But up to now, touch some wood, I haven't had a problem with that. Increased overheads is terrifying. I wouldn't jump into getting a commercial space until you've got a good stream of regular clients. It's stressful enough trying to earn a living, never mind trying to meet these suddenly much increased overheads. So yeah, just consider that. There's some super expensive places, there's some relatively cheap places. I feel like I fell on the feet with mine. It's probably, if you think your pricing structure, you want maybe your rent at least, because I think other overheads like your insurance, your subscriptions and that are relatively minimal, but for your energy and your actual rent on a property, maybe consider having that be the same price as one of your middle or top packages. Because if you've got a steady amount of clients, you already know that you're going to be able to afford your space by just getting 1 or 2 clients a month. Everything above and beyond that, that's your business, isn't it? That's your earnings. So yeah, take steps from space to space, but don't hinder yourself. Don't burden yourself with a astronomically high overheads. Design restrictions. That was so frustrating when we were getting the space, albeit my landlord did bear the cost of making the space a shell, so that I could then layer up my furnishings and fittings. Having to ask about colours, having to have another person as part of the process of, can we move that? Should we move that? It's a little bit frustrating. I'm a bit of a control freak. I like to change my mind on a whim, go out and just do it, without having to consider the building itself. There are elements of my studio that are listed and protected, like the windows and things. You can't change the colour of those on the frames. There's considerations like that. Having a landlord is different. You normally pace yourself as you saw fit, whereas now you've got like landlord's admin and whatnot, getting in touch for rent, for refuse collection, planning and all that kind of stuff, being part of centre meetings and monthly meetings and things, talking about the centre. It can add on to the time that you need to commit to your business. And the public, public have an opinion. They have an opinion about what you're doing. It can be a bit brutal sometimes when you see some of your local forums, not another photo studio, don't we have enough of them? You hear all sorts, but thankfully you also get a lot of positive things. Sometimes where you have your studio, they might not be your target clients within that area. So you can get interesting comments from people about, prices are a fortune, who's going to pay that? Well, not them sometimes, not your local community. A lot of my clients travel within like half an hour from surrounding larger towns and cities to me. So yeah, it's just managing and keeping a positive aspect of how the public perceive your business. Next slide, please, Mark. The global pandemic, gosh, that's affected us all in many, many ways, hasn't it? So lockdown postponed sessions have been hard. If any of you are already in business and dealing with this, you'll know. I think as we've gone to the second and third lockdown, my dealings of it have changed. I went from trying to retain every single booking that I had that had been affected. I mean, you don't plan to refund a month's worth of clients at the end of the day. I didn't run with that much money in my business. I ran with, say, 3 months rent and a bit of a buffer as my constant turnover, above and beyond my earnings. But when it came to the first lockdown, and it was 4 months long, 4 months of newborn sitters, cake smashers, and I take a £99 deposit to secure my sessions, and they pay the full balance of their chosen package within it should be 48 hours, but usually it's the night before. So when it came to the lockdown, I had thousands and thousands of pounds of 4 months worth of potential sessions to refund. So I just worked my butt off, basically, trying to keep those bookings, move them on to the next type of session. Newborns, say, I offered them, if they kept their booking with me, I'd say hopefully we'll come out in time and we can still go ahead with your session. But if we don't, then I'll if you're happy to, I'll transfer your deposit to the next session type, but I'll upgrade you for free to the next session. So they were getting sort of £100-200 worth of free just by keeping committed and keeping their money with me. That when it came to holding the sessions in sort of June, July time, that was super hard. So at that point, we'd got newborns that were now 12 weeks old, some were 16 weeks old, and it was like, wow, what a trial, going from all the things you'd learned with dealing with tiny little new, fresh, supple, bendy, posable, sleepy babies to this child that is sat up interacting with you, smiling with you, trying to grab things that you've wrapped them in. It was good fun. It kept me on my toes, and if anything, it's now giving me the option to not just be so cut and dry with, your newborn's 8 weeks old. No, we're not going to do that session. Now I do offer, I don't advertise for, but I would take newborn sessions for older babies. But now we're on lockdown 3. It were really hard work trying to create the type of images that I was happy to produce, with the older babies. So now I'm kind of, rather than trying to keep them as what would be classed as an older newborn session, I'm moving them more towards, right, let's save that money and we'll capture sitter sessions. Because I want to move forward at some point. When we do hopefully finally get released from this one, I don't want to be playing catch up again. It's been 2 rounds of catch up and splicing in an extremely busy Christmas season. I want to move forward, use the new things that I put in place, and start shooting the things that I really want to shoot. Financial hardships, obviously, we've all had an abundance of those. Shooting at home, I don't know what you guys have experienced, but financial help's been, for those that I know of in-home studio still, has been little to no help. One bizarre benefit of me moving studios when I did was that I have had some government help with forced to close grants and such, so that's really kept me going. Managing clients' expectations and behaviour with the pandemic. Trying to, most, probably 90% of people realise it's not your doing. You're not, you have no choice in the fact that you now can't do that newborn session, and they've been lovely about it, but you do get the odd one, often a surprising client that just isn't happy. they're not happy, you know, they're kind of stamping their feet. Well, we're not going to catch those images because that's what I've been selling. I've been telling them how important it is that we capture them at this particular time in their life. And now all of a sudden, oh, it's all right, let's do it in 3-4 months' time. You know, it doesn't make sense to them. So trying to keep good lines of communication open with the customers and reassure them that as and when we come out of lockdown, we will capture something special. The local lockdowns were hard on the business front because, say, for example, I'd be forced to shut, but neighbouring businesses were still allowed to operate in tier 3. So it was quite a worry that clients would, you know, knowing how much they wanted a session, they'd want a refund from you and take their money to the next photographer that was still allowed to be open. So that's been an interesting time to navigate. I've only had 2 that have wanted refunds. I don't know if they've then gone on to do that and moved to someone else, but yeah, tricky times to navigate. And that kind of covers cancellations and refunds and the financial implications of that. Cramming of sessions, that ties into, you know, experiencing lockdown 1, lockdown 2. The playing catch-up's awful. You're judged on what you're managing to achieve at that time. So they're coming to you, they're staying with you, wanting that session, they've committed to stay with you, and they want that same level of service. But when I've reopened after lockdown, I've got like double, triple the amount of sessions that are all time critical newborn sitter cake smash sessions that need to be done in like a month. And they're still, some people still expecting to have the same turnaround times. Well, that's not been possible. It's just not. And one person, one woman running all the elements of my business and communicating with the client to say, you know, before we have this session, this is the position I'm in, and it's going to take, you know, rather than it taking 2 to 3 weeks to get your gallery, we're looking at 5 to 6 weeks at this point. If it's important for you to capture this time, then please understand that before we go into the session. If not, refund. Don't give yourself the headache of having to apologise for a situation that you've not chosen and that you're trying your best to cope with. Next slide, please, Mark. So opportunities. There's a bit of a misconception that we've all of a sudden got like an abundance of time to spend. Personally, I haven't found that, and that's all because of the cramming of sessions. Because I'm playing constant catch up, I'll go into a lockdown and I'm now homeschooling 4 kids. Blooming heck, school was hard enough first time round, never mind trying to convey to my kids that just want to go and play in the garden, get on a game or do something other than learn how to do things that I am totally outdated with knowing how to show them. So yeah, homeschooling's been an enormous drag on time. Finishing lockdown crammed sessions, really time consuming. So yeah, with any time that you've got available, update your website, present your most recent work, refine your pricing structure. There's, you know, everyone's getting a bit jittery. Are we going to have clients after this? Well, coming out of the 2 lockdowns, I've found, yes, the clients are definitely still there, and there's definitely opportunity to really put your business out there, sell even harder than you did before, how important it is to preserve memories and capture this special time. So I would personally say, don't panic, don't join the fight for the bottom by putting your prices down. Put them up. Make what you offer exclusive, you know, a luxury product. Other people have been saving money. They've not gone on holiday. You know, they are furloughed. Some people are furloughed. You know, there's pockets of money out there that we can tap into still. So just hold steady and be confident in what you're offering, any prices. Create new marketing material and maybe look at your packaging. Maybe it's a bit outdated. It doesn't best represent your brand and your business. So looking to getting up to speed with that. Practice your wrapping and lighting techniques, so you're posing or creating your sets. That sib, the standing baby, has been great for me to try, because you can get set in your ways. You know, you can have your go-to poses, and I've got a list of ones that I'd love to try. So using this practice baby is helping me. If you don't want to invest in one of those, you can make your own. There's plenty of sewing templates out there. You can have a go at popping one together, or just nick one of your kids' fabric-bodied dolls. You know, if you're already in business, have a de-stash, have a declutter, get rid of all that stuff that's that you're just paying to store. You know, if you've not touched it in 6 months, it's not one of your go-to things. Chances are you're never going to use it again. So destash it and get rid of it. The lovely thing with photography I found is that things hold the value. You know, you're not having to give things away when it comes to getting rid of them. You can make a nice amount of money from destashing your older and unused props. So that's studio DIY. You know, give it a good freshen up, paint, maybe move your areas around, and snap up commercial space. If you are looking to go either straight to a commercial space, if you've already got a good client base, like maybe you're a wedding photographer and you're bringing clients into now wanting to do family photography, seriously look out there. There's really good deals to be had with commercial spaces. Nobody wants the high street to be empty. Landlords don't want their units empty. So look around, take your time to find somewhere that could work for you. I'm not going to lie, I negotiated on my space. I'm in a 3-year tenancy. For the first year, I've managed to get that at a reduced rate. I got first 3 months for free, which was while I sort of moved my stuff in and got used to the space. So first 3 months were totally rent free. The next 9 months are at a reduced rate. And then the final 2 years will go back to the original. Makeup's down my face. We'll go back to the original contracted price. Yeah, so that is the end of my webinar. I'm hoping I've not rambled too much, and that you've maybe found something interesting from it. And I'd love to answer any questions. I'll hang about for afterwards if there's something you want to ask me.
That was an amazing webinar, and I knew it was going to be full of so much information and detail when we did the quick run through before. So I did say, get your notepads ready. There's plenty to take down, and that was very much the case. If you're watching, you kind of tuned in halfway through, don't forget this will be available on Catch Up, so you can watch it on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or on the societies.net/webinars. You can choose any of the three and rewatch it at your leisure. So if you tuned in halfway or you want to rewatch it, then you are more than welcome to do so. Just before we jump onto the Q&A, we do have to say this has been kindly supported by our good friends over at Sony and London Camera Exchange. And Mark has got some fantastic details for us about some offers that he's planned. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Colin. Emma, thank you ever so much. I mean, I've just made some notes here, okay? And, you know, your content creation is of high quality. And, you know, thank you for sharing your story, how you've adapted, the drive, the determination, and how you continue to succeed, the positivity that's come out of this, and how much you've learned, but being honest with us as well. I think thank you for sharing that, because it is just, you know, it's a breath of fresh air, and I hope everyone's, you know, seriously, it's really, really good. Yeah, sorry, no hard sell here, other than working with obviously Emma and Colin at the Societies, alongside with London Camera Exchange. We do have some offers for you. So instead of giving you codes and things like that, if you are really interested in purchasing a Sony product, or you're looking to trade in, then we're working with London Camera Exchange. Here's their website on the screen here, going along the bottom of the screen. Please have a look at what you're thinking of buying, and get in touch with Colin directly. Give him your details, and I will respond to those individually, because we can help you transition from, say, DSLR or other manufacturers to Sony kit. Obviously looking at the kit that Emma's using as well. And if you want to find out more about our kit, then we're more than happy to share my details out. Instead of giving my email address out to everybody, Colin will respond individually. And just to let you know as well, if you have purchased recently or you're just about to purchase, please make sure you register your camera or body on this website here. There's no offers on at the moment, other than you can get exclusive cashback through this website. And finally, our extended warranty has been extending another year, so till the end of January 2022. If you have purchased a product or you're just about to, please make sure you register, and you can get an extra year's warranty for free, worth around 50 quid. So again, I can't thank Emma and Colin enough for the opportunity to support you guys with this, and thank you again to Pete at London Camera Exchange and the team there for hosting this on their sites as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to have to go because I've got another piece of content to do. So if you can kick me out, Colin. Thank you again, Emma. I'll catch up with you a bit later.
Yeah.
And Colin, thanks again
Matt.
for your support. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate that. I think from today's webinar, I think the two take-homes for me was certainly that wall of light. That is an amazing thing, and I'm sure if your husband and his friend made them to order, they would be very, very busy. And also that the opportunities, that's still around. I love that slide. I think it was the last slide you did. But so much positivity. Yes, there's still people making money out there. There's put your prices up, check your website, do that little bit of DIY around the studio. Make use of your time. There's so much that we could still be doing. Funny enough, I was listening to the radio the other day, and there was one guy who said he is on furlough, and but he's actually saving more money now because he's not walking past Tesco's every day and buying the £3 meal deal and stuff like that. So it's just a different world out there at the moment, but there's still people looking to spend money. And as always, family is a really important thing, and people love and cherish the photos of their newborns and their family photos and stuff like that. So it's still very much a massive and viable market. So I'm definitely going to nick that slide and put it up on our Facebook group after to say, here's Emma's list. What have you ticked off so far? It's a great thing to do. So we did have a few questions come in. I think you mainly covered them all, if I'm honest. Richard was asking about what if you use flashes or constant lighting. So I think you kind of covered that. They use the Elinchrom stuff.
Yes, it's the only studio light that I've ever used. Again, I've practiced with it on one of Gary Hill's training sessions, and it's just been faultless for me. It's really easy to use. You can sort of increase, decrease the brightness, and it's just great. There's nothing overcomplicated about it. You can tweak it and see the effect that you're having live there and then. So I'd highly recommend investing in that.
Amazing. Ian Hardy, all the way from Dubai, who's been tuned in, is saying, setting up a portrait studio, what would you say is the minimum amount of money you should have before starting up a business?
Okay, so if that's to actually create your space as a bit of a guideline, when it was in my house, minimal. Your backdrop holder's about £50. Backdrop rolls, maybe you'll spend about 200 on your backdrop rolls. Your camera is what it is. Depends what you go with. A couple of thousand if you're going to go straight in and get your Sony gear. But if you were going to do your conversion, I already had the garage built, so that was a massive saving because I think a builder in conversation afterwards said you're probably looking at about 20,000-ish to build a garage that's roughly my size, which was 14 feet by 31 feet. It's kind of like a double length garage. So that aside, if you've got the garage and you're going to convert it, mine cost about 8,500. Insulation's a fortune, and it was quite hard to find of all things. The installation for your floor, walls and ceiling, lifting those beams because it was such a low ceiling, I wanted mine to be as vaulted as it could be, and the plastering, decoration, to get it to the point before any fittings and furniture were put in was about 8,500, and then probably 2 to 3 on fixtures, fitting, lights. Again, absolute fortune to buy them because I had quite a lot. That was the other thing I touched on in the webinar, was planning your sockets and lights. Make sure they're where you want them to be and not somewhere that can interfere. What was that? 8.5. And then whatever you decide to spend on your fittings. When I moved to the commercial space, there was about £4,000 to £5,000 worth of stuff needing to be done, including the flooring, purchasing the camera system that was already in there, and the reception desk, a couple of cupboards and things that the previous tenant left and that I've utilised. Rent, it's pay as you go along, but as you know, I got a really good deal where I didn't have to pay rent for a while. But my plan going forward is that, because I only moved in September last year, is that I have 3 solid months of rent that I don't touch. That's just there for rainy day. I can have a quiet month. I can be injured, not be able to work for that month. but 3 months solid, and then a bit of a pot on top really for bits and bobs that might go wrong or want to invest in. Maybe 1,000, couple of thousand that's there that you can tap into and out of and keep topping up again. So I hope that gives you a bit of an idea.
Amazing, perfect. Loads of people saying thank you so much for today's webinar, how much they've enjoyed it and got so much out of it. So if you're watching, please do put a thank you in for Emma. She's given her plenty of her time today and given so much inspiration for one, but also tips, techniques, and a little bit of background about her studio and her business, which has been absolutely fantastic. So please do share the love and put a thank you comment in. I know she'd really appreciate it. From us, Emma, that's us done for today. It's been a really interesting webinar. Again, a massive thank you to the guys at Sony and London Camera Exchange for supporting us with this webinar, and a massive thank you to you. It's been absolutely brilliant. And for anybody who wants to know a little bit more about what we do at the Societies, then please do head to thesocieties.net, and all the information's on there. We're more than happy to answer any questions you may have on membership. But again, from us today, thank you so much, Emma. It's been absolutely amazing, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.